am Chris Pravat. I am first vice president of OCEA, and I'd like to welcome you all to this wonderful membership meeting where we get to discuss our new tentative agreement. With that, I just want to recognize that we have recognize the members of the negotiating team. Is there anyone in the room who's on the negotiating team? And if there's anyone online, again, thank you for your work as members of the negotiating team. And with that, I'm going to turn it right over to CB so we can get into the details of our tentative agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Charles Barfield, OCEA's general manager. One of the folks in the room walked in and then made a comment about 4 years ago and how different it is. And so it is very different than our deal was back in 2019. And I want to take a few minutes and we're going to not just walk through the deal points, but we're going to essentially tell the story of everything that happened. And before I do, I just want to lean in on a couple of points because after our email blast went out on Thursday, anybody who responds, those responses come to me. And generally speaking, I answer every one of them, almost every one of them. So the most frequently asked question of people responding is, wait a minute, I see the deal points, but where's the takeaways? And I'm here to tell you, you're not going to find any because there's not one single takeaway in this entire tentative agreement. Some have noticed that on the back of the flyer was a list of concessions that the county was seeking, but we fought back every single one of them, and none of them made it into the final deal of this contract. So again, no takeaways whatsoever. The other thing I just want to lean in on before we jump into the deck is today. Today is Juneteenth, and probably the second most frequently asked question was, what about Juneteenth? Did you get Juneteenth? And the answer was no. We had it closed at one point, but the county was insisting on giving up 20 hours of PIP for an additional holiday. And the bargaining team said, nice try. We're not doing that. But OCEA is the first labor organization to complete and reach a tentative agreement. I do know that other unions still have an additional holiday on the table. No guarantees, but something like a holiday would be county-wide. So if the county at any point changes their tune, then they may come back to us and say, we'll give it to you as well. All right. So everybody sit back, relax, enjoy a cold, refreshing beverage, unless you're in the car. And let's see what all of this entails. So again, on the agenda, we're going to talk about how we got here. We're going to describe some of the negotiation sessions. We'll obviously go through the deal points, talk about next steps as it relates to voting and potential adoption. And then, of course, we'll open it up for Q&A. So, like I said, 4 years ago, we entered a 4-year contract. The effective date was July of 2019, but as you see, or you'll see here in a few minutes, that we didn't actually ratify until November of 2019. So we went way past expiration, but our last deal was 4 years, 14.6% in wages and retirement cost reduction. And you see our current MOU is set to expire on June 29th, next week, next Thursday. So the county puts together a negotiations team, just like we do. And this year, the lead spokesperson was Terry Maxudian from County Council. She was paired up with Jamie Newton from HR, and then a whole bunch of folks from agencies, particularly the larger ones. And say, well, is that who we were negotiating with? Absolutely not. These 5 individuals here, that's who we were negotiating with. They weren't in the room, but these are the decision makers. You have 5 elected politicians who run the county. Now, between the 5 supervisors and the negotiation team is another layer of what I call influencers. And that's your CEO, Frank Kim, your Chief Financial Officer, Michelle Aguirre, and the Chief Human Resource Officer, Colette Barnes. But in the end, it is these five folks right here who grant the authority through the negotiation team to come and engage us. And in the end, they will be the ones who adopt this agreement. But we didn't wake up and all of a sudden just have this board. You know, we've been working on the composition of this board for years now. And you'll remember, for those of you who've been around a while, there were years and years and years when we had 5 supervisors who were making their careers on being anti-labor, anti-worker, anti-pension, like John Morlock. But for every one of you who walked a precinct, phone bank, did any political activity alongside us, thank you. Because it is those efforts that got these folks in place. And they're the ones ultimately that we are negotiating. 2018 brought in Supervisor Chafee. Special election brought in Katrina Foley in 2020. And then this last cycle in 2022 brought us Vince Sarmiento. And you can see on the board, we have 3 very strong allies. So when we get ready for negotiations, we do our homework, right? You don't go to the room and hope you get a good deal. You prepare for a good deal. And some of that preparation was our normal forensic audit that we do, where we compare Orange County's finances to the other 9 largest counties across the state. There are 5 in Northern California and 5 in Southern California. We also do our market research. We know exactly where these 70+ benchmark classifications are in comparison to the other counties. We also, obviously, we're staring at inflation this year, something that we haven't had to contend with in a long time, but certainly it was on the doorstep. Then the other thing we do to prepare is look at various settlements out in the market. And we have included this chart in many of our communications. You can certainly go to our website and you'll find every single piece of information that we put out. This is a really interesting chart because it shows various county settlements, including Ventura, LA County, San Diego County, and a couple of other OCEA deals, including the court and the fire authority. Now, why is that important? Because those 5 elected officials, this is their scorecard. This is how they measure themselves against other counties, and in particular, LA. The LA deal was 12%, and as you see, ours rang in at 13. Oh, there's the chart. I should have put that one up. At any rate, you've got it in your materials. It's embedded in each of the communications. So when you're having workplace conversations, this is a good factual piece of information that you can use when you're talking with your coworkers. Excuse me a second. So when we started this process, you may recall that we start with a survey. And the only folks that can participate in that survey and help set priorities are members. If you're not a member, your input is not welcome. All right? And that shows up in voting too, because in the end, when we're voting on a contract, non-members cannot vote. So non-members don't have a say in setting priorities, nor do they have a say in ratifying a contract. Big reveal here, number one priority across the board was wages. We kept true to that throughout the entire process. And then the other priorities that certainly showed up in the survey was recruiting, retention challenges, and the number of vacancies. Tim and I, we visited every single board office multiple times to make sure that they knew that we knew exactly what the vacancy rates were, the problems that it was causing, and the fact that OCEA had 1,764 total vacancies. Every single one of you was being impacted by vacancies. Now that's easy to say, but the clients don't go away, the public doesn't go away, the work doesn't go away, the bosses don't go away when you're staring at all those vacancies. So again, what emerged was a mutual interest on our part and on the part of the county to fix this. There they are. There's our negotiations team. And some of you are here in the room. This is how this room looks when we bargain. And the viewpoint that you're looking at right here is from the county side. So you can imagine the county having to stare down a group of about 40 of us, most of which are county workers, a handful of OCEA staff. But you know, Chris recognized all of the primary negotiation team members as well as the alternates, and that's a pretty darn good-looking bunch. The guy in the far right, that is Charles Guston. He is now one of our most recent retirees. So he started with us, but then decided to retire midstream. So, okay, let's get a little bit into the weeds on the process. You know, from our survey, we talked with our stewards, our labor reps, and others are involved in setting the proposals, the specific proposals. We had a total of 27, which was very comprehensive and broad. The county, you know, they came back. Theirs was pretty comprehensive too. They had a total of 29 proposals, and it included concessions. So again, you can look on the back of the flyer. They wanted to eliminate PIP. They wanted to eliminate employee married to employee. They wanted to tweak night shift differential, which would have excluded hundreds of OCEA members from night shift. They wanted to delete workers' comp supplemental pay. They wanted to extend new hire probation. They wanted to eliminate arbitration for folks who are released during new hire probation and they allege discrimination. They even wanted grievances to go away after 365 days. So essentially, the county could sit on their hands, hit 365, and then if you have a grievance, it goes away. So again, you probably get tired of me saying this, not one single takeaway in this total agreement. We met with the county 10 times. Some of those days were long. One day started at 9 o'clock and went until after 6. Some days were short. We were only with the county for about 15 minutes. So there's good days, there's bad days, there's progress days, there are frustrating days. It's just about the process. Our first session was on March 22nd. And as you now know, our last session was last Wednesday. You know, we've got on here that this is consensus driven, and it really is. For those of you who've ever served on the negotiations team, coming in with your personal agenda is not welcomed at all, because this is about getting as much for as many as possible. Now, were there arguments and debates, discussions? Absolutely. But it was all done with the spirit of building a consensus and doing what's right for the 11,264 OCA represented positions. And that takes teamwork. The county culture reared its ugly head at a couple of times when we were making good progress, and some folks got a little nervous that we might be going too far too fast. So there was some knee jerking going on that slowed the process down. But at the end of the day, again, back to those 5 supervisors, we were extremely influential in getting their authority to go as far as they possibly can. And our bargaining team believes that we didn't leave one nickel on the table. And that's why our negotiation team is unanimously recommending this. But also through the process from survey until now, this really is an organizing opportunity. And what better than with a great contract? So again, you saw the number, almost 3,000 people participated in the survey. That led to over 200 people applying to be on the negotiations team. It led to over 300 folks joining the UAT. We certainly kept people apprised as we went through the process, updating the membership every single time we met. Most of the open rates on our email blast were in the 60s and the 70%. We certainly updated our stewards along the way. We had a membership meeting right in the middle of the process on May the 11th, had over 1,500 views of that video. We even had members out doing member-only meetings. We call them meeting in a box, where they went out to their work site and it was a member-led meeting. And then lastly, we got Blitz Week on here because we went out June 6th, 7th, and 8th, and we contacted, engaged about 3,000 OCEA members in the span of 3 days. That's pretty cool. And again, all of these activities are designed to do one thing, and that's to get the county's attention, send the message that we're mobilizing and that we're informed, but to affect what happens in this room, which is at the table. And it worked. So thank you for everyone involved in that. Just a little bit of context on our last 3 contracts. 2015 was really a slog. We met 15 times just to determine ground rules. The first negotiation session was 3 months after expiration. So we didn't even really start until we were beyond expiration. And in 2015, there were 17 takeaways that the county had on the table. In 2018 was really a period of dysfunction. We did a short-term bridge agreement because we were just in the political cycle where we were able to get Doug Chafee elected, and we felt that Todd Spitzer would win the DA race, opening up an opportunity to, again, affect that. In 2019, just a note, we didn't finish until 4 months after expiration, almost into the holidays. So when I mentioned county culture earlier, the county is more than happy to go beyond expiration because 2 things. Number 1, saves them money. And number 2, they are not going to agree to any retroactivity on wage increases. So the calculus that our negotiations team had was, can we finish in a timely manner, get money in people's pockets sooner without sacrificing any level of achievement? And our team absolutely did that. So I'll talk timelines in just a minute. So let's walk through the elements of the tentative agreement. This may be old news to a lot of you at this point, but it does it is important to go through everything just to make sure we're all on the same page. Term, 3-year term, 2023 until June 2026. General wage increases. 4.75 upon adoption, which is likely going to be next Tuesday, the 27th, and I'll talk more about that. It would go into effect the beginning of the pay period following adoption, which would be Friday, June the 30th. So our contract expires on the 29th. The next day of the new fiscal year is the 30th, and we're set for that. And then next year, pay period effective June 28th is 4.25%, and then in 2025, 4%. So immediate, and then within 2 years, your wages are up 13%. But it really isn't 13% because it's cumulative. And 13 actually turns out to be 13.57. All right, that's the importance of having that bigger number up front, and then the next 2 years building on that. Next item is merit increases. In 2014, in a really tough bargaining cycle, the county insisted that the two-step for meets expectation becomes one. And at the time, OCEA, all OCEA, 80% of our members were topped out. Only 20% were in the steps. Today, the topped out percentage is 56, meaning that 44%, almost half of our members, are somewhere in the steps. So in addition to the general wage increase, a lot of our folks are going to get that additional 2.75. As long as you meet expectations, you'll get that two-step merit. So again, just continue to build. Jail salary supplement pay is next. Many of you know that we have fought for this for several cycles. Back in February, we had an item go to the board where a number of folks got their jail salary supplement pay increased. So it became a negotiations priority to address the others. And so in almost every one of our MOUs, you have certain classifications that are permanently assigned to the jails or the correctional facilities. Some get 17 cents. That will go up to 75. And those who are currently at 75 will go to $1.50. The county is going to conduct an audit, but these increases will go into effect after the audit and within 90 days. Special assignment pay. We've got a number of those here, and I'm just going to walk through each element. So we have new special assignment pay of $1.50 per hour for all hours worked for employees in the following classifications who are permanently assigned to the Crisis Stabilization Unit, to the CAT team, which is Crisis Assessment Team, and the PERT team, which is the Psychiatric Emergency Response Team. And the classifications that are eligible for this special assignment pay are mental health specialists, mental health workers, behavioral health clinicians 1 and 2, and service chief 1 and 2. Then we have clinical supervision, and that's where certain classifications have been assigned to supervise other clinicians who are not yet licensed, but they weren't receiving any special pay for it. So again, now we have clinical supervision pay of $2 an hour for all hours in which they are providing clinical supervision. And it applies to the, I'm sorry, Kevin.
The next slide.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Kevin. So it applies to senior social workers, clinical psychologists 2, behavioral health clinician 2, senior social services supervisor, and HCA service chiefs 1 and 2. Then within SSA and within Child and Family Services of SSA, we have 2 programs that are acutely challenging, and that's emergency response and foster care investigations. So currently, the senior social workers who are assigned to ER, emergency response, they're receiving an additional pay item, which is close to $1.50 an hour, but it's grant funded and it's got a termination date. By putting this into the MOU, it will be permanent and ongoing. So emergency response assignment pay of $1.50 per hour for all hours worked for eligible senior social workers and senior social services supervisors assigned to ER or foster care investigations. Next is boot allowance. We have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of folks who receive boot reimbursement in various forms throughout the county. The eligibility and the criteria for it has not changed, but we have fallen really uncompetitive, to quote the market on boots. So boot reimbursement is now doubled from about $150 a year up to $300 a year. Next is trustee release time. So the OCEA Health and Welfare Trust has 7 trustees that govern the trust. And we were able to secure agreement that the trustees will receive paid release time in order to come to our office 6 times a year to conduct trust business, as well as 3 days a year to attend continuing education training. Next is steward release time. We got the county to agree, you know, our typical midday steward meeting is between noon and 1, and we were able to secure release time of up to 60 minutes so that folks could conveniently get their way here and then get back to work. The county wasn't willing to pay for it. We wanted them to, but we've got language going into the MOU that guarantees you the release time to attend our monthly steward meeting. Supervisorial salary differential. This is something that the OCMA, the managers, have in their contract, that when they get promoted, there will be a specific range higher than the highest paid direct report. We didn't have that in our MOU, so now we do. And supervisors will be paid at least 2 steps higher than their highest paid direct report. Obviously up to the highest step for that particular classification. Bereavement leave, the content of bereavement leave didn't change at all, but the old MOU language said it had to be taken within 6 months. We've now expanded that to be a year with approval from your management. Catastrophic leave, healthcare leave donations were limited to 8 hours per fiscal year. Not anymore. Now it's up to 24 per year. And this continues to be a very powerful benefit of members helping members, where a lot of folks donate and a lot of folks get donations from CAT leave. Healthcare leave, we expanded the use of healthcare leave for COVID-related absences. You know, COVID's not, ain't going away, is it, Louis? And so if someone has an annual leave balance, you can use your healthcare leave for COVID-related absences. Last fall, we saw the state recognize Native America's Day instead of Christopher Columbus Day. How that impacts us locally is that the Superior Court is a subdivision of the state, so their holiday schedule converted as well. And then that threw into the mix a conflict with the justice partners, you know, public defender, district attorney's office, probation. So the county wanted to get lined up with the Superior Court. So we agreed to that swap. We agreed to establish a Children and Family Services LMC. They help on workplace issues in CFS, And then we also established a recruitment and retention working group to specifically go after other workplace issues and other improvements that will help with those staffing challenges. And then lastly, the little guy here, but important to SSOs. A small number of SSOs are required to maintain a Class A and B license. So we were able to match AOCDS's amount for those folks, and there you have it. So those are the deal points. We'll talk a little bit about next steps, i.e. voting. And then we'll open it up for questions and answers. So when we blasted out the tentative agreement last week, we also turned on electronic voting. And that you see that reference to Big Pulse. Big Pulse is a third party that we utilize so that voting is not managed here. It is managed off-site with a professional organization called Big Pulse. So we opened up voting 5 o'clock Thursday last week, and it'll stay open until 1 p.m. this Thursday. That gives you a full week to understand the deal points. Obviously, this is being recorded. We're going to put this out. You can watch it as many times as you want. You just have to put up with me and my accent and me and my nasally post-head cold. So, but if you want to watch it a bunch of times, you certainly can. So what's going to happen tomorrow? Tomorrow, the county is going to post publicly our red line MOUs and the deal points. All right. You may ask yourself, well, why is the county doing that? We haven't even determined whether this is ratified or not. Remember, one of the keys is to get money in your pocket as soon as practicable. And the way that that happens is the Board of Supervisors can only adopt during a public meeting. Their next public meeting is June 27th, next Tuesday. The county has a posting requirement that any labor deal has got to be put out for public consumption for a week. That's why the county will post our stuff tomorrow. And then we will wrap up voting on Thursday. The OCEA Board of Directors Executive Committee will come in Thursday afternoon and review the reports and certify the results. And then we will notify the county whether we've ratified or not. And we have 6 individual MOUs, 6 individual bargaining units. Every single bargaining unit ratifies or not on their own. Even though we bargain as a coalition, each bargaining unit ratifies or not on their own. And then this Friday, if we ratify, then we will notify the county and they will post our tentative agreement on the supplemental agenda that they have to post on Friday before Tuesday's meeting, so that then they can consider it during the meeting and hopefully adopt it. So I know that that was a lot. Oh, and if they adopt it, then it goes into effect Friday the 30th, which is the first day of the next pay period. And the money is in your paycheck on July 21. Okay, so effective June 30th, in your check, July 21. So let me pause, and Kevin is going to field any questions that come through the chat. And then obviously anybody in the room here can just stick your hand up. And can you also, do you mind stop sharing?
Yeah.
So let me toss it out first into the room. Is anybody in the room have a question? I know it wasn't that damn good. All right, not seeing any hands. Kevin, what do we got in the chat?
First question, is there any change to pension plans?
Okay, great question. So the short answer is no. The longer answer is years ago, the County Board of Supervisors put up what's called Measure J, and Measure J was passed. And Measure J prohibits any pension enhancement unless it goes to the voters. So our ability to enhance either pension plan is restricted based on Measure J.
All right, what percentage of members must accept the offer for it to pass?
Okay, so let me just restate one thing. To be eligible to vote, you have to be a member. Of those who vote, okay, it's not a threshold of a percentage to pass it, but of those that vote, it is 50% plus 1 equals ratification. So let's say, I'll pick our largest bargaining unit, which is the general unit. Suit management is close, but the general unit, and it's way more than this, but if 1,000 people vote, then 501, you're there, you're ratified. Okay, so of those that vote, it is 50% plus 1, and that bargaining unit would be ratified.
Can you talk about telecommuting?
Yes, great. And again, that goes back to our frequently asked questions. Telecommuting was a high priority on the survey. And I can tell you that telecommuting stayed in our proposal from day one until the last day. Now, why did we withdraw it? Number one is the county made it very clear they were never, ever going to agree to put telecommuting into our MOUs. It is both philosophical and born out of fear that we would paper them with grievances over telecommuting. Not that we would ever do that, but it was never, ever going to make it into the MOUs. So when you're negotiating, remember I said we started with 27 proposals, and telecommuting was one of those big significant ones. The team is always evaluating our position and whether or not leaving something in, how that's going to impact wages. And so at each and every turn, the calculus and the strategy was to get wages as high as possible. And yes, some things had to fall off. Telecommuting was one of those. The county never showed any interest whatsoever in telecommuting in the MOU. They have a policy. They're very happy with the policy. They think the policy works because it gives departments discretion that what might work for ROV is going to be different than HCA, and it's going to be different than the assessor, and it's going to be different from other agencies. So I am not anticipating that the county makes any sharp left or right-hand turns as it relates to changing their approach to telecommuting. In a lot of cases, it's working just fine. But no, it didn't make it to the MOU.
Can you explain the supervisory pay differential again?
Yes.
A few people have questions.
Okay. So the salary differential language that will go in if we're adopted would provide that if you get promoted into a supervisor position, and this happened just a few months ago, and the reason that it's in here now is because of what happened just a few months ago, where some service chiefs got promoted, and they were now in the supervisor position, but they were making less than some of their direct reports. And again, in ACMA, in their contract, they had a provision that allowed for that gap to exist. The fact that we didn't have that provision, we fixed it for a small number of folks. But again, we wanted an automatic provision that if you get promoted, then you are at least 2 steps higher than the highest paid subordinate that is your direct report. Hopefully that answered that clarifying question.
Any change to healthcare leave enhancements?
Any change to healthcare leave enhancements?
Or any changes to the healthcare leave policies?
No, well, only what I included, which was to expand cat leave and then to provide permitted use for healthcare leave in the case of COVID-related absences.
Then just to address this, this is being recorded and it will be posted on our website at the OCEA.org/county negotiations webpage.
So while Kevin is scanning for other questions, hey, what about bilingual pay? I don't see anything in here about bilingual pay. So the county approached us about 6 months before negotiations and said, we want to talk about creating a process to which bilingual certification and recertification is consistent across the county. We said, okay, we'll talk to you about that. What we want to talk about is money. So there is, outside of negotiations, there will be a separate negotiation on both of those topics, both how bilingual pay is certified and then what people receive in terms of bilingual pay. Again, we're not interested in any concessions. We're not interested in any takeaways. We're not interested in anybody losing ground on bilingual pay. If the county wants to change a process, and if we can get some more money for people, then we will certainly do that. Okay, anything else, Kevin?
What happens if it's not ratified?
Oh, great question. Hadn't even thought about that. But what happens if the deal is not ratified? Well, then we are back to square one. Well, what the hell does that mean, square one? Does that mean that we just go back to the table and pick it back up where we left off? No, because if, and this is applicable to any individual bargaining unit, if a bargaining unit rejects this contract, we are back, reject it, meaning you didn't ratify it, you told the county this is rejected. They are not going to reward you for that. They're not going to reward us for that. That means we go back and we start all over again. It doesn't mean that we go back to where we were. That's one possibility. The other possibility, which is straight out of state law, the county has the legal authority to impose a contract on you for a year. Now, we're sitting at 4.75, 4.25, and 4. Do you think for a second, if a deal is rejected, the county is just going to say, well, let's just give them the 4.75 then and be done? No, you would have just rejected it, and typically employers will punish you for that. So again, there are no guarantees on what an imposition would look like. In the state of California, public employers have quite a bit of latitude. Again, if a deal is rejected, they can impose, and they have quite a bit of latitude to decide what that imposition looks like.
A few questions about Juneteenth again. Some people were late. So can we just address that one again?
Okay, so so I get a call this morning from Frank Kim. How you doing? I said, I'd be doing a whole lot better if this was a holiday, because today's June 19th. In retrospect, we probably wouldn't have scheduled these member meetings on Juneteenth, but that's now behind us. Did we ask for Juneteenth? You betcha. So did we ask for Christmas Eve. We asked for Cesar Chavez Day. We asked for Juneteenth. We also asked for a floating day, recognizing that people's time is pretty important to them. The county had no interest in expanding the number of holidays, with one exception. Juneteenth was on the board. It was in play if we agreed to give up 20 hours of PIP. And for a lot of our folks, that 20 hours, not only is it more than 8 or 9, but it's important to them. So yes, we could have gotten Juneteenth, but it would have come at the cost of PIP, and our negotiation team was not interested in doing that. Now, like I said earlier, there's a number of unions that are still in negotiations. We are the only union that potentially will finish before expiration. The others will come later. And I am told that other unions are also pursuing Juneteenth as a holiday. If by chance the county folds with another union, you betcha they'll have a side letter coming over to us to agree to Juneteenth as well. And of course, we would certainly do that. But this was not a year for takeaways. This was not a year for any concessions. And so our team held really firm to that. And our negotiation team should be really, really proud of this package. Kevin.
It's just confirm with everybody, the only holiday change is the swap of Columbus Day and Native American Day.
Just the swap.
We
have a question in the room.
How does this contract compare to other contracts we've got?
Well, again, I will refer everyone back to this chart that not only details a number of other counties, but two others listed on the chart is Orange County Superior Court and the Fire Authority. And in the Superior Court, yeah, they had a nice number up front, but the total was 11. And so the county, beat the court deal by a full 2%. And on Fire Authority, it was a 4-year deal. But if you look at the first 3 wage increases for the first 3 years of Fire Authority, it's 4.5, 3.5, and 2.75. That rolled up to 10.75. So again, the 5 supervisors, they know all this, right? And they know that we agreed to it in those 2 units. So having those 2 deals roughly at 11% sitting there was an obstacle that we had to overcome, and we did. We pushed them on wages right by that number, and then we landed on 13, and our folks unanimously believe that we didn't leave 1 nickel on the table. In fact, I got a call over the weekend from former OCEA General Manager Nick Berardino, and he goes, "You guys took all the money." I said, "You're right, Nick, we did." Okay, anything else, Kevin?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Do we release the total vote count?
Okay, that question came up earlier in the noon meeting, and the answer is absolutely not. And the reason for that is for union security. Remember, there are people, there are institutions that would use that information against us. There are politicians who still have very deep anti-union, anti-worker sentiments. And we have never, and we will not release the vote counts for this contract.
Talk about why a 3-year deal versus other options.
Okay. So one thing happened back in 2019, and that's when the Board of Supervisors began to move toward treating everybody the same, or treating everybody equitably. Many of you know that that certain safety unions, deputy sheriffs, have historically gotten richer contracts. And what we're seeing both in the county and across Orange County in various municipalities is where safety units and general units are being treated the same. And we can live with that. Well, one of the things that occurred in 2019 and then in 2021 is everybody got on the same cycle. Every union in the county of Orange has the same expiration date. And so we could live with a 3-year deal. The county certainly is pushing all of labor to a 3-year deal. But then term is always taken in conjunction with the economics. And if the economics showed up for a longer contract, yeah, we would consider that. If the economics dictated a shorter contract, we could live with that too. 3 is a nice sweet spot, and I believe the county will continue to keep everybody, all labor groups on a common expiration date.
Any changes to educational and professional reimbursement?
So the answer is no. Back in 2019, right, we saw that real nice jump up to 10,000. No change to educational reimbursement.
How confident are we that the county will accept this offer?
So I would say very, because remember how the process works, that the authority to allow the county's negotiation team to engage us comes from the board. Okay, so the board authorizes them to engage us to a certain level. So the Board of Supervisors, they already know what our deal is because they had to authorize it up front. Now, I'll tell you, back in December of 2015, Tovar will probably remember this, that when DA now, then Supervisor Spitzer was on the board, a single blogger started blogging about our deal, and he moved to get it delayed. So it ain't done until it's done. So it's a great question. And so, so I wanted to talk about authority. Our team is very confident because of just watching it unfold. But fingers crossed, it ain't done until it's done. So the message for the rest of this week until Thursday is, if you're talking to coworkers, the words "have you voted" should come out of your mouth, right? And we should drive as many as possible. It only takes about 10 seconds, but drive as many folks as possible into, you can come in here in person, vote with a paper ballot. You can come in here on one of our computers. You can do that. We've had a parade of folks in here today. You can do it at work. You can do it on your personal device. You can do it on county devices. So again, the key is to drive as many people to vote as possible.
All right, there's a long one here. It's kind of not necessarily a question, but specifically about Pepper people and their retirement. Any talk or any sort of contribution increase, or any kind of, you talk about how that was sort of pushed into wages?
Gotcha. So while I was going to mention, while Kevin was going through that, if anybody has not just a question now, but if you want to dive into any element of this in greater detail, just come into our office. We'll have folks here who will sit down and walk through anything with you. So this isn't just a one and done kind of deal. Okay, so PEPRA. Some people know what PEPRA is, not everyone does. PEPRA is the Public Employment Pension Reform Act of 2013, and that's when state law changed. And it had certain provisions and restrictions in terms of retirement formulas. And what happened in 2013 when PEPRA went in, the employer, the county, had the ability to choose from available formulas, and they chose the cheapest one. So the fact that some of you are on a 1.62 at 65 formula, because that's where the county placed you when PEPRA went into effect. Okay, so again, Measure J limits what we can do in the negotiation cycle for any kind of enhancement. Alongside the 1.62 at 65 is a match. And it is an up to 2% match that many Pepper folks are taking advantage of, because that's county matching your contribution. That helps in the long haul for those that are on that formula. The other thing that is in place is a provision called auto enrollment, which means that if somebody is new to the county today, they get auto enrolled at that 2% contribution in order to take advantage of that match. And I can tell you that our proposal did attempt to increase that, but all along the way, it is evaluated against wages. And in the end, our team decided to move the county to put as much into base wage increases as possible. So there is no change to the up to 2% match for the Pepper folks. Again, no takeaways, no concessions, but status quo as it relates to that element of retirement.
That looks like all of them. If anyone has any other specific questions, reach out to us in the office. One more.
Okay, we got one in the back of the room. Yes, sir.
I just kind of want, can you briefly kind of explain our releasing election results that provides polls?
Okay, if I heard you right, can I explain how releasing our results would somehow jeopardize us?
Yeah. And polls.
Okay, so I'll use John Morlock as an example. Okay, how long have you been with the county?
7 years, and I know John.
Okay.
And I know John Mormont.
Yeah, and so there are still people like that. Okay, and there are organizations like the Freedom Foundation who they raise money to try to convince people to get out of their union. Okay, these are just very staunch anti-union organizations and philosophies. And if we published our results, okay, it could be used by someone who wants to draw external attention to those other politicians who are voting on our contract, right? And they could put considerable pressure on them that why are you giving OCEA in this case and our represented workers, why are you enriching their lives like that? And so it is information that does not benefit us in any way if it's used externally. It can only be used against us. So again, as a union security matter, I mean, we decide how we run our business, and in this case, it would not serve our interest. Kevin.
This one, just to confirm, if 50% plus one vote, yes, the agreement goes into effect, and July 21st will be the paycheck that the raises will be seen in, assuming everybody, supervisors, members, everybody along the way vote yes.
So yeah, step number one is vote until Thursday. Presuming that it ratifies, we'll notify the county. Your 4.75 goes into effect Friday the 30th, which is the first day of the pay period. And that paycheck is on July 21st. Chris.
Yeah, just an additional clarification on the issue of releasing our vote numbers. For us as a union and for our members, there's only one thing that counts. Was the contract ratified or not? It doesn't matter by how much. It's a matter of whether or not the contract is ratified. And if people were to look at those numbers, they'd say, oh, well, the union isn't this strong, or oh, they're very strong. There's no point there's no benefit for us as a union to have that conversation externally. All that matters is that our members approved the contract. And you'll find many unions, if not all, do it that way, where they say, hey, we either ratified or we didn't. We don't go into these bits and pieces of, well, what percentage of your members voted? And it's pretty much the way we've done it for what, 80 some years?
Ever since OCEA was
Yeah, ever
created.
since OCEA began.
And the other point about like who determines, it's not OCEA staff. It will be your coworkers. It will be your elected executive committee members of the OCEA board of directors. So we don't certify the results as staff. Chris is the first vice president. He and the other members of the executive committee will certify. They'll go through, look at all the IP addresses where votes. See, we can tell that you voted, but we can't tell how you voted. Okay, so the anonymity is preserved in the way the Big Pulse turns the reports back around for us. And they can also determine that like no big swaths of votes came from any one particular IP address. So it's actually a very, very good platform.
Thank you for that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's much
Okay.
better than paper.
Anything else, Kevin?
Yeah. If a senior social worker is temporarily put into one of those special assignment things, are they eligible for the increases, or is it only for permanent placed people?
You're ready to go up there?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so just real quickly, I asked Veronica Rodarte, our senior, one of our senior labor reps, to come up because predominantly because Veronica was the one that negotiated this. And so the question is, if somebody is temporarily assigned into one of these two programs, do they automatically get the special assignment pay?
The question specifically was like a graveyard or a weekend, or like just getting called in for a once in a while type thing, not necessarily.
So are we talking the emergency response? and
Yes.
foster pay? No, those are for employees that are assigned to those duties regularly. So if they just get called in, if they come in, that would fall under callback or overtime pay if they're coming in for an extra shift. But if they traditionally work in a different program within SSA, it would not apply to them.
Thank you. Okay, so we're at the 6:20 hour. Again, just key timelines. Voting is open until 1 o'clock on Thursday. We'll certify the results one way or the other, ratified or not ratified Thursday afternoon. If ratified, we will communicate to the county. They will post it on Friday for potential adoption on Tuesday the 27th. All of that goes fine. If all of that goes fine, then first wage increase Friday, June 30th, in your paycheck, July 21st. Again, vote, 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 and encourage all of your coworkers to do the same. So again, thank you very much. Thank you for your support of this union and this deal. And again, any other question, just don't hesitate. Call, email, come by and see us. We want you to have as much information as possible in advance of voting. So thank you very much, everybody. Have a good night.